Hello, growth leaders listeners, and get ready to ignite your leadership journey with Simon, the Vice President of Licensing at Tungsten Automation, formerly known as Kofax, the global leader in intelligent workflow automation solutions. Today, a team of 2,200 employees in 32 countries serving 25,000 plus global customers. With over 17 years of trailblazing experience within the company, Simon's ascent from entry-level dynamo to strategic powerhouse is nothing short of legendary. Buckle up as we embark on a lightning-fast adventure through the highs, the hurdles, and the invaluable insights that have propelled Simon to the forefront of leadership landscape. Welcome, Simon, to Growth Leaders by Chart, where every moment is an opportunity to soar.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Great. You're most welcome to be here. Today, we're going to have an interview with you, and your journey has been quite some time with this exciting industry. And if we say from entry level trenches to vice president suite at Kofax, sounds really like a corporate thriller. Can you give us a sneak peek into the plot twists and your character development that brought you to where you are today?
Yes, well, a thriller it was for sure. I would say it definitely had all the contents of what a good thriller contains. Some suspense, some excitement, surprise, anticipation, anxiety. I think as with everything else in life, one grows with the challenges that are presented to them. And clearly for me, working for this company has massively extended my leadership skills, the range of the responsibility by presenting challenges. I got the opportunity to manage and grow with them. And so that's also the beauty of working for a software company. As we often say, the only constant working for a software company is change. And with change, obviously, come challenges, but equally so opportunities. And after all, I think one can say I was lucky and maybe decisive enough to recognize.
So if you look back now, I mean, it's a long time, but on the other side, it's not that long time, but 17 years back. So where are we? We are in end 2007, 8, something like that. And I know Kofax. There's been a lot of acquisitions, changes. Could you just go through a little bit on high level those changes and how that impacted you and your work?
Yes. Well, there's been massive changes. I think again the only constant is change. So as you said, we've been going through massive amount of acquisitions, integrations, and I think with every integration, you're challenged to grow your skills, challenged to grow your knowledge, your know-how, and that kind of comes naturally if you're obviously open to it. I think either you are, or you're ultimately challenged in the position you are anyways. And I think ultimately have had a huge impact on who I am as a leader today, right? You obviously grow with every acquisition, and it's been more than a dozen. I can't tell you exactly. I would have to look it up, but it's definitely more than a dozen of integrations going forth and back in, buying and being sold, and all the adjustments that come system-wise, culture-wise. Taking over people from different locations, different cultures, trying to integrate them. So there's a constant challenge and a constant exposure to those challenges. And again, you can look at challenges as being a problem, or you can look at challenges as being an opportunity. And I think for most part, that probably is something I was able to manage.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the approach of taking it as an opportunity, I think it's a must. When you're in an environment like that. So you have been responsible and are responsible for what is called licensing as an important piece here. And especially when you acquire new companies, new softwares, etc. Could you just give a short background? What does that contain? What are the principal important pieces, and also what your own organization look like today? Are they all in-house or are they spread out, etc.? So to give the listeners an insight on what your daily challenges are.
Right. So basically, my responsibilities go from, receiving orders from the customer-facing parts of the organization to getting delivery done, getting an invoice out to the customer. And the biggest part of that, obviously, is reviewing compliance of a deal in terms of configuration, all requirements that does it technically make sense to actually deliver that type of software with what the customer might already have or not, or is that going to cause a technical issue? And then typically get a license key out to the customer, though we are much moving to SaaS-based solutions at this point, and reoccurring revenue, and just providing them access to the appropriate platform. So when it comes to integration, and it's interesting that you asked for that, because not only do you have your own history and historic elements of what you still need to serve existing customers, while it's probably having a very different, focus point on what your go-to-market products are, but you then also inherit what you acquire and their history, and still needing to serve those customers as well. And so there's a huge bandwidth of licensing tools where my teams are working with, where they have to go in, where they have to issue licenses, and quite some complex stuff at times where you need to understand what does the customer have, how can we add more to that to make it work for the customer, to expand their solution or upgrade them to a later version that actually supports them better in what they need to do today. So there's a huge portfolio of products, and I lost count of it, but it's definitely more than 30 different licensors that we're working with.
You must have a pretty impressive team handling that. And what does that look like?
Well, the team size is probably somewhere around 70 to 80 guys right now. Constantly changing, obviously, as well as you acquire and you integrate and you become more efficient. The licensing portion, that is partially done within the general teams that do the order processing, some of which we had to carve out because it's just too much for a single person to know all of that and handle all of that. So and we have specific people which are dealing with the licensing portion, and that's, I would say, a highly complex task in a sense, and I'm always impressed how they do their day-to-day work and job, and how.
And where are they located, your team?
They're a bit everywhere. We got a lot of people now in Eastern Europe, in Hungary. We got people in Europe. We got some people in Asia. We got 2 teams in the US. So they're really across the board. Obviously, always with a focus on serving customers best, and as such, trying to have as much as a global.
So are you also then responsible for your team's employee development? I'm thinking from trainings, from leadership training, from employee training, compliance training, and etc. I mean, as a leader, I presume you have at least the overall responsibilities. And how do you think about that to make sure you tie the team together?
Yes. Well, compliance trainings, maybe to start with, are more done and performed on a global company-wide scale. So that part is being dealt with. In terms of actual training to people doing their job and to leadership training, yes, that's definitely within the departments. So yes, constantly exposed and challenged with that. I realized and certainly have a focus on trying to proactively invest time into training my leadership team and into enhancing their abilities. And that also means often you have a lot of junior people which you need to start kind of from scratch to train them on leadership skills, and we try to do that as much as we can in-house, but also get people from external to focus on certain topics and how we can get them where they need to be as leaders.
Yeah. So if we look at this journey of yours, Has there been some really thrilling moments or unexpected plot twist, unexpected changes in your journey to become where you are today? Some happenings which you recall, maybe recent or further back?
Yes. Well, um, it's not quite what you expect. So it's slightly different what people would maybe expect to want to hear at this point. But what I'm thinking of immediately is that at some point I was a couple inches short of relocating with my family across continents. So I'd already put in notice for our apartment back at the time to our landlords, and this was done in a old physical form, like doing an actual mail requiring a receipt confirmation from the landlord. And the same day I handed it in over to the post service, my boss actually calls me up and tells me that I have to put everything on hold because we are just going through a reorg, and that location I was supposed to move to might no longer be part of the company. So he asked me to pause all the activities until further clarity. And what sounds funny now wasn't so much back at the time. I was basically waiting all morning next day in front of the landlord's property to wait for the postman and tell him that he's not allowed to deliver this one letter. And at the end, the letter was interfered, the relocation did not happen, and the other was able to take on, more responsibility and grow in my role where I was, right? So, yes, very much of a twist.
And then how do you balance, family, career, and also being, staying mentally well? And with that, I mean, when there are challenges, there are stress, there are things which need to happen in a certain time frame, etc. At the same time, you have yourself and the family. And so what are your remedies or activities to handle that?
Yeah, so obviously I love to spend time with the family. I think in whatever form possible, spending time with the kids always gives a lot back. I think having family at the end of the day gives so much back, and actually just shows you day after day what you're doing it for. So it's not just for yourself. Or working on my career is not just about myself. It's much about the family too. So it's like an immediate return, or seeing, okay, what I'm doing and probably what you're going through, and maybe sometimes what you have to suffer through is not just in vain, but actually has a direct impact on the ones you love. So trying to spend as much time as I can with them, obviously, and particularly on weekends where there is more free time, or is more flexibility, core sports. But I like to go out in the evening, for example, and just take a walk before I go to bed, actually. And just clear my mind off, have time to think, have time to probably go through certain things that come the next day or whatsoever, and just take the time to clear up my mind.
And when you say that, it reminds me about time management, actually, because that in order to be successful, you have to be able to manage your time, and that's not only in work, but actually privately, etc. I normally say that was the single most important training I've done in my life. That it's just the clue for get on the leadership journey as such. So now let's put you into the writing world. You are now going to be publishing your first leadership book based on your experience. So what would be the top three plot twists, the happenings, or unexpected lesson that readers wouldn't see coming? Have you
Well,
thought about that?
I'm not. Yes, I'm not so sure about unexpected lessons. I mean, leadership has been around there for a couple of thousand years at least, I would say. So maybe not so widely written about as it is today, but I would think good leaders have had plenty of read already to have come across any eventuality of what makes a good leader. However, if you would, if I had to focus on three things, it's probably one: being a leader is not about yourself, but about who you oversee. So don't take yourself too serious or important. That also means like master your emotions. Don't get easily offended. The more responsibility you will get, the more likely someone will be unhappy with you, regardless of how well you actually do your job. And that kind of leads to the second point. Like always reflect yourself, especially if there is dissatisfaction being raised from the team. At the same time, be true to yourself and to your principle. Because if you change them, or like one dissatisfied person, you might make that one person happy, but everyone else unhappy. So I think what people need is reliability, that you will be acting with the same morals and principles tomorrow as you are today. And maybe three, like master your management skills so you can do a good job, but even more so focus on being an actual leader, meaning applying emotional intelligence, authenticity, inspiration, good communication, all of which can be enhanced by regular self-reflection. And that brings us right back to the topic you said. I think no matter what, if you want to really be good at something, we need to have that level of self-reflection, be that as leaders or as parents or whatsoever. I think self-reflection is extremely key, and we take often too little time or proactively time to really carve out time to say, this is the time where I reflect on how I'm doing as a leader, and where I'm doing well, and probably where I'm not doing very well, and where I have to improve or change certain things.
And what you're also touching upon here is that becoming a good leader, you have to actually know yourself. How have you matured as a person over the years? I mean, where you trust your instincts, where you trust, the right and wrong, where you have a clear ethical approach to problems and so on. Can you see how that has matured over the years?
Yes and no, because again, there's I think where consistency comes in, right? So if you didn't have it back at the time, you probably still we're struggling with some points. Yes, obviously, I hope we would all be able to correct where we see we're going wrong, but it's not always so easy, especially so with morals or with whatever you want to call it in the sense of your key points that you want to stick to and adhere to. But yes, you can learn. You can obviously learn from mistakes, but I think it's important, especially in early years, to ask yourself, okay, what are the key things that I probably want to represent as a leader? And so I consciously would want to tell that to younger people that probably start off in the role, trying to settle those as early as possible in your career. Because yes, you can obviously always change and learn and increase and get better, but the earlier you have them defined for yourself, the more consistency you will have in your leadership role and abilities, and the more you can actually build on top of that, right? So I would say it's not necessarily changing. I would say the more stable you are earlier on, the more you're probably able to build more on top of it and get more precise in how you want to apply it.
And you also touch upon another, I think, important point, which has to do with your own trust and abilities, is that in any organization, you won't be loved by everyone. I mean, people will respect you and do things, but there will always be people who has a different opinion, or at least if it's a larger unit. And have you experienced situations like that in your role over the years?
Yes, of course. I think that's naturally happening. It might also naturally happen with the responsibility you have and how much that ties in with the interests some other people in some other departments have, and where you naturally come into some twists or conflicts about resources or about interests or about how you should be executing certain things. I think for me, it's kind of distance myself to some level to the external noises there, if you want so, and focus on really asking myself, okay, what's the responsibility I've actually been given, that I'm really in charge of, that my leadership expects from myself, and that I need to apply in the best possible way to the people I'm responsible for. And how can I make my teams as successful as possible in doing that exact job that I have the responsibility for as a leader, as opposed to how can I try to listen to as many different noises coming from the outside and please those. Yes, obviously I'm much in a customer service oriented department, so you obviously wanna make things as smooth as possible, but not for the cost of like sacrificing your own people, if you want so.
Getting back to that unsatisfactory employees, if you take a situation in the past, or it can have also been a situation where people did things which they should have not done or expressed. So how would you tackle a situation like that? You could give an example from whatever. It could be, let's see what you come up with, otherwise I'll help you out.
What first that comes to mind, I think, is to differentiate between, if that's just an internal issue within the department, or if that has impacts to to a wider span, to other departments also, right? The first thing that comes to my mind is obviously that you might have complaints about some of your people coming from outside, about them not doing their job whatsoever. I think the number one rule as a leader is you got to stand in for your people that trust you, and you need to have their backs. So that's number one. You need to have their backs.
That's external input, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. No matter what, right? To say, listen, there's certain rules on how we communicate. There's certain rules on what can be said, what cannot be said. You're always able to address anything to me as a leader, but you don't address them to like individuals within my department. So that's number one rule. And then to go in and actually spend the time to figure what's happened, because obviously I'm not conscious and familiar with every single case of what's happened. Someone, apparently messing up on how they issued a license and how that didn't work for the customer, and the customer couldn't apply it and has been down for so many hours, causing issues. To then really dig in and say, okay, what happened? How did that happen? How can we improve? How can we make sure this is not happening again? What kind of measures can we put in to kind of prevent that from happening in the future? And to build corrective actions with the employee, but not something that you carry out on the big platform outside where it's all about single employee bashing in a sense.
Yeah. So here, in organizations, there could be a variety of problems arising. It could be everything from harassment. It could be, you messed up the code. It could be somebody who had trouble at home and they're in really bad mood and things like that. But what you're really saying here then is that, when a situation occurs, have that private talk with that person, try to understand what has happened, and find a way together with him, her, to move forward in a positive way. As I understand.
There's always two sides of the coins, right? And we when we hear some rumors or maybe even facts, it's one side of the coin. So you got to understand as a leader. I think we are forced to understand what the other side of the coin is, and even if that might be an irrational or not very pleasant side of the coin whatsoever, it certainly helps you to probably better understand the person, but potentially also to make a different or come to a different conclusion and take a different action out of it. And I think it's very, very key to not just make decisions based on one side of the coin, but before you have understood, or at least tried to understand, the two sides.
So looking forward, now you have the next coming 10 years, and that is, of course, a difficult question in a podcast, but what are your dreams moving forward? I mean, both from as being a person to in your leadership development.
Yes, it's a challenging question, especially in a fast-paced environment where 10 years is a very long time, and anything can happen in between today and tomorrow. And I think a fast-paced world in general. My key focus as a leader clearly is to focus on the self-reflection and make sure that I understand where my potential is, how I can grow my own potential, how I can apply that and pass it on. Ultimately, as a leadership, I think one of the key things is it kind of comes to multiplication, right? I want to be able to multiply what I've learned and pass it on to others. So keep on doing what I'm partially doing, at least increase that, make sure I have people that I know are capable of doing more, that probably only know partially what their potential is, or not at all. Help them to develop that, understand that, and pass as much on to them as possible, so they eventually, outgrow yourself and with one crying out, move out and into more responsibility somewhere else potentially. And I've experienced that, fortunately or unfortunately, quite a few times already. It's always sad to see them leaving, obviously, but it's always good to I think understand that you must have done something right if people are feeling comfortable and capable.
And that those are comments from a true growth leader. So taking that, and finally, now you have a set of young individuals, girls and guys, eager to make career within the Tungsten Corporation. What 3 to 5 advices would you give them on their journey? They are either on their way to become a leader or just became a leader here. What 3 to 5? Think about these, or have these in your mind, focus moving forward, and then it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll probably counter that with a question and say, if there's anyone out there being a leader or wanting to become one, do you think that knowing your own potential is key to your leadership abilities? And if so, do you know what your potential is, and have you started to work on it already? And if not, then it's probably time to do so. And two, maybe, have you started applying servant leadership, or are you still focused on yourself? Because ultimately, you can't succeed as a leader if the focus is on yourself. So if you want to be, truly leading or inspirational to others, you got to put them first. You can't be focused. You can't be focused on yourself. And then 3, probably carve out those time. Make sure you have appointed time for self-reflection, where you look at yourself, see how you're doing, see how you're performing. Where do you need to level up? Where do you probably need to step back or whatsoever? Just make sure you have time and you carve out those time. And back to what you said earlier about time management, really have those appointed time and not just leave it to the accident as to whether it will happen or not, because I think it's so key that we have those elements in our own leadership path.
Thank you. I think those are highly valuable advices to anyone aspiring and growing as a growth leader. Simon, I think it's been great having you on the Growth Leaders by Short podcast show today, and I would like to thank you so much for today.
Well, thank you for having me, Peter. Appreciate it.